Good afternoon. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Thursday, November 2nd, 2023. It is 2:04 p.m. This session is set to go until 2:30 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Vice Chair Ty Menser to my right. Commissioner Gary Edwards is excused for this meeting. He's attending on behalf of Thurston County, the Washington County's Insurance Fund. So he will be tuning in probably later to these meetings. And we also have interim county manager Robin Campbell, as well as assistant county manager Rob Gelder. And today we're discussing the A-25 Forest Land Conversion Code Update Briefing. And okay, pass it to Ashley.
Oh, thank you, commissioners. Good afternoon. We are excited to be here today to present the Forest Lands Conversion Update. I do want to point out that I think we assumed we had an hour for this briefing, so we prepared a robust presentation, and to ensure that we have time for your questions, if it's okay with you, we might trim down some of the background information so that we leave as much time at the end. Sound like a plan? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dana Bowers, one of our associate planners. I think this is her first time before you. And yeah, she'll take it from here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'll be driving the presentation, but she will be sharing it.
Thanks, Ashley. Good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, my name is Dana Bowers. I think you both know me. And it's my first time in front of you. And we just want to talk to you about what are the updates to the forest land conversions. So that's the main topic. We really want to bring forward the scope of this project because it was scoped by the Board of County Commissioners and it's a big project. So it kind of got busted up into 4 different phases, and we want to make sure that you understand that this is just one of the phases and we're moving on to do other things later, and also just present those proposed changes and really get questions from you and see what we can do to help you understand this work and how to move it on so it can be helpful to our residents. So the overall scope, like I said, we have 4 phases. This first phase is what we're talking about. And this whole project is really a culmination of different board priorities. And it's started in 2009. So as things moved off and on and off the docket, and then in 2020, they got listed on the official docket. And at that point, tree protection standards were also added. And in order to do a really good job of making sure we had the data we needed, we thought splitting it up into 4 phases would be the most effective way to handle it. Phase 1, which is what we're looking at right now, represents that just the code changes for forest conversions. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but it's really just that code change piece, and it provides immediate relief for some of the permitting issues we've been having around forestry. So that in a nutshell is really kind of the highest priority of the things that we're doing, and want to make sure we can get it done by the end of the year if possible. All right, so the timeline for this, we started with the Planning Commission in June and had their robust review. It did get extended a little bit. We planned to be done with them in August. However, with staff pieces going on, we ended and got the recommendation in September, late September. And so now we're able to come to you and bring this for your review. And like I said, if we can get this adopted by the end of the year, that would be fantastic, because it really does represent clearing up those permit level misunderstandings or confusions, and really will make our process a lot smoother. So moving on to kind of look at what our current policies and codes are, this forest conversion piece is spread out across our code. It's not, forest conversions is in one place, but forest protections is spread out across the code, and we have lots of different places that contain it. So we have guidance in the comprehensive plan. We have the code pieces, the development code pieces, and we also have drainage manual pieces. And so those are the those are overall where they're kept, and they talk to critical areas, and they talk to endangered species and habitats, and lots of different intermingling pieces, not to mention, the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan talks about trees and their role in sequestration and how we need to provide that. So lots of different pieces coming together, and I really want to focus, the red letters there do indicate we're really just talking about the forest conversions, and those phases coming later try to work on those other pieces to make sure they all blend together. So when we talk about forest practices, there are, DNR really owns a lot of the forest practice regulations. So we really want to clarify what we have jurisdiction over. And it really just is those class 4 permits. So when I talk about class 4, I mean when we cut down trees and we're going to put something else in its place. So if we're going to put any residential developments there, or any commercial developments, industrial, anything at all, moving in its place that would take that land out of forest use. So that is something that we actually, as a county, applied and adopted ordinances for from the state. Many of the counties across the state still have the state managing those conversions. So it is optional for us to even have that in our code. And because we requested it, then it is part of what we regulate. All right, we do have a few, like Ashley said, we have a few.
I guess I will ask the commissioners, would you like us to quickly move through some of these background, or we can move on to sort of what the proposed changes are? Sort of covers our.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna have to go through the detail at some point. If you'd rather
Okay.
just hit the highlights today and then knowing that you're gonna go back at a different time, or if you'd rather not go back, then just go slower and we'll just pick up where we left off, because we're not gonna be able to make decisions or really changes like this without knowing all the background.
So maybe we'll go with the highlights, and then where you want us to go deeper, we can go deeper with questions.
Yeah, because I was thinking already, I was like, I'm probably gonna have to have a separate meeting just to have a little bit more of a breakdown on this.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine too. I probably will as well.
So, just to give you an idea of what we do, the level of permitting that we do that revolves around forest conversions, we have only about 15 of them a year. That is straight conversion. So 15 permits on average per year are going through our office, converting forest land to other uses.
Can I stop you? What do you mean
Yes.
by forest land? Is it where there's trees? Is it where it's the zoning says it's forest land? Like what is it's where there's a commercial operation of forestry? What is forest land?
The technical definition from DNR is land capable of forestry.
So it could be a private parcel with lots of trees that could,
Yeah,
what does that mean, capable of forestry?
Well, it's really what triggers permits, and it's
Yeah.
the number of board feet.
Right.
That triggers permits.
so,
Board feet?
yeah.
Yeah, it's the volume that you get out of a harvest, out of a tree. It's measured in board feet.
Yes.
How many board feet do I need on my land before I'm considered capable of forestry?
So it's within the harvest. So if we go back just a little bit to the classes, class 1 is, and that's a state level determination, anything that is 5,000 board feet or less is considered harvesting for personal use. And so it doesn't trigger any permits.
And how many
And-
trees could that be?
It could be a lot, it could be few, it just depends on how big the trees are, right? The larger the diameter tree, the more board feet it has.
Yeah, but
So
I mean,
it-
are we talking about 10 trees? or-
Oh,
Two
like
truckloads?
two truckloads.
Is what has been estimated.
I mean,
for our
2
area.
logging truckloads.
The measurement is different, like it's not trees, it's by board feet.
Yeah,
But if I imagine a truckload of trees, there's like 50 trees in there, right? truckload?
There can be, and I've seen truckloads with 3 because they have gigantic trees in them.
So if it's under that, none of these permits get triggered.
It's not considered forest land.
Well, it's not considered a forestry use requiring a permit, essentially.
Okay, and we have the right to regulate that, but we don't? Or we don't have any right to regulate under
We
5,000
don't have any right to regulate the personal use. The class 1 is a protected forest class by the DNR. The only one that we have the right to regulate is the class 4s. So going back, class 4 is just the conversions.
And 2 and 3 are what?
2 and 3 are the harvest for commercial purposes and replanting. 2, 3, and then they have class 4 special,
Okay,
just to be
so
clear.
as long as you're continuing to actively forest, then you're not a 4.
Yeah, exactly, because you're not
We only get to
converting.
talk about when they're cutting them and they're never coming back.
Yes, that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
maybe a good time to, because it's on the next slide, the moratorium release. So what happens with the class 2 and 3?
So class 2s and class 3 permits, when we're considering the purpose of them, it's for the harvest and replant, so that cycle. And so they all come with a development moratorium. So when a landowner wants to harvest trees, they go to the DNR, they get a class 2, class 3 permit. And then we get a copy of that class 2, class 3 permit here because they're not allowed to put a house, they're not allowed to put a motel, they're not allowed to do any development on that property. Because they have said by applying for the class 2 and class 3 that they are going to harvest and replant. So then the moratorium comes from the state, and then we have authority to determine whether we're going to release moratoriums or not. That's where our authority rests.
So then, I guess, just can you break down then when class 4 comes a little bit more into play with?
Class 4 comes into play, so if you cut down more than 5,000 board feet and you don't replant them and you put a development on it. So 2 of those things. So you can cut down 5,000 up to 4,999 board feet of trees and not require any permit and not replant and not put a development. Or you can even put a development or a little shed if you need to. You can do that if you don't require that. If you don't require the forestry permit. So the purpose of that is we have people doing pre-commercial thinning, Christmas tree harvesting, taking out hazard trees, all of that is part of that personal use in that 5,000 board feet. So it's important forest management to make sure they're thinning the forest, taking out trees, and providing room for those larger trees to grow and provide the services that they do. So when we're thinking about that, and we're thinking about those moratoriums, and we've talked about the permits, we do have 55 class 2 and class 3 permits, and the reason we know about them is because they come with those moratoriums. Those are state permits. That's forestry, commercial logging permits. So the class 2 and class 3 permits, we do about 55 a year, and those come with moratoriums. And that's really why this topic is coming up and why we're changing the codes. And a huge impetus for that change is that we're having these class 2 and class 3 permits come in, and then people get a moratorium. And then the land gets sold with a moratorium on it, and the next landowner decides they want to build something. Yet the moratorium lasts for 6 years, so they have to wait out a moratorium in order to build. And the landowner didn't know about it, or for whatever reason, that communication wasn't made clear. And so then we're put in a position where we need to release the moratorium, or we have to choose whether we want to release a moratorium. And so right now we have 3 different ways to do that. But it makes it more complicated for people when they have 3 different avenues to go through. And having one door to go through makes it a lot more clean and easy. So that's one of the reasons that this code is up for updates and for a refresh, because it's really unclear and hard to manage, hard to implement.
Sounds like sellers need to be required to disclose that when they sell a house.
They're supposed to.
They're supposed to. They're absolutely supposed to. And we have our permits available. You can see for, DNR has all their permits available online. And you can go into the DNR and see if that land had a recent login. And then our moratoriums are listed on our permit side that it's available for people to search without a public records request or anything like that. It's a search.
Realtors don't do that as a matter of course.
They should.
Okay, well, it doesn't sound like our problem to solve.
No,
But
but making it clearer and making only one way does help, right? And so if there's 3 ways to do it and the realtor says, oh, you're in this category, but they misunderstood, then there's a little bit of our lack of clear communication too. So making it so that there's only one way to do things is helpful. So that's one piece. The other piece is that right now in the UGA areas, we have a North County UGA area that has different rules than all the other unincorporated area. So that's here. And they're really opposite. So I'm just kind of getting into like why this code is messy and what we need to clean up, okay? So right now, the inside UGA areas have a different measurement. They don't go by board feet, they go by square feet on the ground. Okay, and so in one case, that kind of makes sense because we're dealing with smaller parcels or parcels that are going to be developed, and measuring square feet is a whole lot easier than thinking about board feet because nobody knows what board feet are. On the other hand, though, when we think about it being 2 different units and even the same number, 5,000 and 5,000, it's way more complex than it needs to be. And really, we didn't dictate the 5,000 board feet. That's under state legislation, so we really should keep that thread going through. The outside of the North County UGAs also don't require development permits, so you can just harvest trees and do nothing with the land if you have this tree conversion permit. So if you have forest conversion permit. So you could clear the area and then not develop for 10 years. In the meantime, we've seen invasive species and, different flooding issues because you remove the trees, you remove the ecological functions that they have for the land.
You also, you
No,
also
please.
get perspective cutting. So you're
Right.
looking to sell a piece of property and say that it was recently logged. So a landowner might prospectively cut it under a forest lands conversion permit. Whereas if you actually have in mind, you're the person actually building the house, you might only need to clear a quarter of that land, or not even a quarter of the land to accommodate, your single family home. So having a development application also on the permit side makes it clear what trees really need to be removed to accommodate that development versus just, we're gonna clear cut the whole site.
I've never seen North County UGA as a thing, so what do you?
Exactly.
So what do you mean by that? Like
Well, this is the only place that exists. So it's Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater UGAs lumped together.
Oh, but it could be on the south side of their cities. It just means that
Yes.
versus Tenino and
Yes,
Yelm.
exactly. And so, but part of the issue with that is that between Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater, they all have very different city codes, and it doesn't necessarily let their city codes. The whole point of the UGA is that that municipality's codes get to kind of bleed into the UGA so that people are ready to adopt those codes, right? So if we have our own separate layer, then they're adopting 3 sets of codes as they move from UGA to city to county. So that it doesn't necessarily do what it's supposed to do. And so having the city's own codes kind of blend out like is designed with the UGA makes more sense and doesn't have this
I think we did
separate
it backwards.
category.
Touch it.
Okay.
And what did you said, I didn't quite understand, square feet means what? Like,
Square foot on the ground, like how
so
many
a tree
square
might
foot?
cover like 5 square feet,
Yeah,
but it might be like 1,000 board feet or 100 board feet or something.
exactly. That's why this is ridiculous. Sorry.
Sorry.
I don't mean to-
Confusing.
So, I
confusing.
mean, so 5,000 square feet is a lot more trees, right, than board?
5,000
If you're just
square
using 5,000 as a number.
5,000 square feet probably would be it's like an acre, right? So 5280.
42,000 is an acre.
42,000. Never mind, never
3 by
mind.
6. Yeah,
Okay.
it really
A square
depends
mile.
on how densely those trees are in there. I mean, I don't think you're gonna get truckloads of trees off of 5,000
Well,
square feet.
And the reason for the difference, I'm speculating because I didn't write that code, but at the same time, the square feet probably is about what is needed to have a build site. Or what was thought to have been needed to have a build site in the UGA.
Because in urban areas, we're really focused on lot coverage.
Right.
So that kind of is translated from square feet into square feet.
Oh, I see, they're just,
So it's lot, kind of with that
so
mentality
it's
of lot.
just a square, 5,000 feet, no matter how many trees are in that square?
Yes,
Okay, I
Yeah.
got you.
like ground area.
So yeah, it'd be impossible to say which one's more trees.
Yeah. Okay, so these two main things, like the moratoriums and this inside, outside UGA thing are part of the main confusion. But we have one other piece that has been underutilized, and it's the conversion option harvest plans. So there has been one conversion option harvest plan in the last 4 years. So our permit staff couldn't really even answer my questions about if it's working well because nobody uses it. So this is meant to be an option for people that don't know whether they're going to develop or not. So not everyone knows. I guess I really like to use the example of folks that are trying to have a succession plan for their kids to come and build a house on their 10-acre parcel, right? That doesn't always happen with a 6-year lead time. So I know whether I can cut and harvest my trees now and then replant, and then my kids are gonna come later, or whether this is happening all at once, right? Those decisions are kind of can be made very quickly for people, and so they might not be sure whether they're going to develop or not. That's just one example of what could go on, right? And all our lives are changing all the time, so it's good to have flexibility and ways for people to do the things they need to do. This option, a conversion option harvest plan, would allow folks to harvest, but remove the moratorium. It also is like a double permit, so they provide a conversion option harvest plan and they get reviewed by a forester at the DNR. So they have 2 different reviews of that one harvest or that one activity. Then they also would go under our critical area review at the county level. And that's one of our main goals because we have different critical area regulations than the state would require for class 2 and class 3 harvests, which are those commercial harvests. So, I know.
3 more minutes.
We'll probably get through a little bit more of the background.
Yes, so these are the moratoriums that exist right now. We have, like I said, we have those 3 options: the waivers, administrative review, and a hearing examiner. And from what we've heard from the community, the hearing examiner is almost too much regulation, very costly, very time-consuming. And then the waiver can be almost too easy, where we're having folks maybe choosing to do not the right pathway because this is almost like a loophole that we have. So making sure that and also just making things one pathway would be the easiest for these conversions, or for these moratoriums, if people need a release. So other counties answer these questions in a whole host of other ways. Because, like I said, the majority of counties across the state don't even have their own class 4 permit regulations. They use the class 4 permit regulations from the state, and the state monitors and administers them. So from, Kitsap and Pierce, we have everything from, they don't have any moratoriums releases. If you have a moratorium, too bad, you're stuck for 6 years. All the way to
Jeez, Rob.
I know.
I didn't all the way to if you, allowing for different types of development depending on the pressures of that community is facing for development. So, one has single family home allowances and the other has other allowances. So, We did a mapping exercise to see where the highest risk was for the parcels that are most likely to be converted, and that's in the RR515 zone. The highest conversion is not in our protected forest lands, so I think that's kind of a relief. We can get through just a little more, but this is, I did spend quite a bit of time in public engagement, and I wanted to, if we can get through that. The public is really concerned about the cost and the time of these permits because it really does impact the housing affordability and the ability to develop. And then, we have a huge interest in keeping our legacy trees and making sure that they are protected. They're communal, or they're public. They represent public value. And then development, hand in hand with conservation, helps us do development well and allow development in a way that doesn't hinder other people's needs. And then just a lot of concern around enforcement and making sure that we are writing rules that are enforceable and that they're clear, they're enforceable, and that it's administered in a way that's, oh goodness, this word. Yes, consistently.
Questions before we adjourn?
I know.
It's a lot, but I think to sum it up really is really trying to simplify a process, have it such that it is consistently applied, regardless of where it's occurring in the county. And then to be able, as a docketed item, if the board wishes, Dana will be back on Tuesday requesting potentially the setting of a hearing in the end of the month, so that we can get some additional public testimony on the matter, and then go from there.
Yeah.
So maybe we can proactively reach out and get onto each of the commissioners' calendars to maybe do a little bit of a deeper dive.
If that would be helpful to them, I'm absolutely available for that.
Are you ready for this to be on an agenda to set the public hearing, or do you want the individual meetings first?
It might be shocking to hear me say this, but I'm not sure I'm ready for this. I can probably get ready by the time we set the public hearing, but this wasn't enough time for me to go through it, so.
Right.
My brain, so.
Feeling mutual.
And you've been working on it longer, so I mean,
Yes.
I know anecdotally that a lot of trees get cut for no good reason in this county, so I have to make sure that I'm happy to make things simpler, but there can't be an overall incentive to make that problem worse than it is, so.
Right.
I have to make sure that I'm comfortable with the fact that this is net neutral or net positive for tree canopy in this county, because we have, we learned in our climate plan that like 93% of the tree canopy sequestration burden of this county's climate goals falls on the unincorporated county, not the cities, based on development pattern and where the canopy actually exists. So this is a new wrinkle on something that, this whole effort got started like way before there was a climate mitigation plan.
Right.
So it's a new layer of analysis that, I have to be sure that I'm applying to what's going on here, so.
Right. And I apologize that I wasn't able to bring to you the
It's not your
changes,
fault.
because the changes do outline how we're addressing that.
Okay, well, that's not your fault because half hour was not enough for this topic, so. I think we just need to have another, frankly, Commissioner Edwards is gonna have a bazillion
Lots of
questions, you know that.
questions, lots
Do you-
and
So
lots,
why don't we
yeah.
just suck it up and have another briefing
Yeah.
as soon as we can for an hour to go through.
For an hour at least,
At
yeah.
least, or not 90 minutes to go through this.
We can probably get another briefing scheduled is at the end of November.
The end of
Abs-
November, okay.
Okay.
This
And
isn't,
an hour or an hour and a half?
Does
I'd
this,
say hour and a half.
yeah, does this have to, I'm wondering about the timeline, right? If we're not able to come in at the beginning of the year.
For action,
Yeah,
Yeah, this is not one of the comp plan
Okay.
items, so it has a little bit more
This can
flexibility.
move forward.
Okay, then,
Yeah, I don't see the,
okay, if there's flexibility in there, I would like an hour and a half to kind of really try to absorb this. He's like, as soon as he started, I was like, oh, I'm gonna need some time to kind of just let this sink in.
I think we would appreciate that as well. This is a
Yeah.
really complex piece of code. Dana and the team have done a lot of work to try to identify where those opportunities are, where the county can step in and try to embrace, you know, the tree protection piece as well as the forest conversion piece. So,
Okay.
I can't remember exactly, but there was one context where we were like, people wanted us to do something, to fix something, and the answer was, you can, you go out, you have a civil action against your realtor or the seller for lack of disclosure. It's not the county's burden to create a path for you to solve a problem we didn't create. I mean, maybe that's okay to do, but I don't think it's necessarily 100% always our responsibility.
And
But, maybe this works, but we'll get there.
Perfect. Okay, so then, thank you. And as a follow-up, we'll have an hour and a half briefing on this topic, and
thank you for giving me
You-
your time.
thank
And I'm
you.
looking forward to spending more time with you.
Okay, 2:36, we are adjourned.